Okay.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I am very proud to bring you Age of Heroes, Path of Public Service. And today we're going to be interviewing Beatriz Pelaez-Martinez, and she's running for a Borough Council seat here in Tenafly. Greetings, Beatriz. How are you today?
I am doing very well, Hercules. How are you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal, and I'm looking forward to learning about the journey that brought you to this point.
Yes, great. I'm looking forward to sharing it and answering any questions that you may have for me. So let's get to it.
Okay. What first inspired you to get involved in local politics?
A great question. And I can tell you that I have been interested in politics since I was a kid. My parents are originally from Cuba, and I grew up in a house where my dad read the local paper, the national paper, every single morning, and it would always ask me opinions on different things. For him, it was really important that I not only have an opinion, but try to have one that's an informed opinion. And while he and my mom were not really involved in politics, I think something they did not foresee was that encouraging me to be really informed about what was going on led me to later getting involved in the community where I grew up, trying to make sure that people were registered properly to vote, that they knew the topics and that they knew the candidates for different elections. And that's where it started. Running for council really has been something that has kind of always been something I have considered, but never really had the opportunity, I guess, or at least, I guess the way I could explain it would be, it was something I always wanted to do, but I didn't really have the courage to do it. And thanks to a friend of mine here in Tenafly, she encouraged me to throw my hat into the ring, and here we are. So that's basically the trajectory.
So awesome. So it's a dream come true for you. It's something unfulfilled that now you have an opportunity to fulfill. What did you do in the interim? What type of profession did you seek out in the world?
Ooh, okay. So currently, and for the last 2 decades, I have been a public school teacher. I actually currently work at Tenafly High School. I am a language teacher. Before that, I worked at another high school in Monmouth County in Middletown, and I taught also at Rutgers University. But I've had quite a few. I don't have a traditional trajectory to my profession. I'm an alternate route teacher. So I actually went to college and got my bachelor's in art history. And I aspired to work in museums. I wanted to be an art restorer. And I lived overseas for a while. And I came back. I want to say I came back to this country in April of 2002. And I happened to coincide with a big push for language teachers. And that's how I ended up here in this job that I have, which I'm really happy I fell into teaching. And it's a great career. And I really am thankful that I enjoy my job as much as I do.
And your job gives you insights into the school system and the needs of students. And so that is an excellent advantage if you're running for a council.
Absolutely. I have, for the exception of when I taught night school at Rutgers, I've always worked with teenagers. Currently, I teach sophomores and juniors, but I usually teach upper level classes, and really being able to speak to either kids who are 17 or kids who are just, I shouldn't really say kids, but young adults right on the brink of turning 18 and hearing, how they perceive the world and, what their opinions are about things is something that I get the gift of hearing all the time. It's actually something I really enjoy.
And so you have a unique perspective. My career too has also been rather circuitous. I worked in the mental health field for many years, for decades. I've also worked in education, and I'm an entertainer and a bunch of other things besides. Now I'm a podcaster too. But yes, the winding route takes you in many interesting areas and provides you with very many interesting perspectives. So that's a very good thing. You see the world in different ways.
Absolutely.
What are some of the issues that you feel strongly about as a candidate?
So I would say that the things that that concern me, and what really inspired me to try to earn this position, is I, as a resident and as a teacher, and also as a parent, I have 3 girls in the school system. I feel that I see things from multiple perspectives simultaneously. So, one thing as a parent, I would love to see the downtown area be a little bit more vibrant for the youth of the community. As a high school teacher, I have for many years done a unit about comparing our community to communities in other parts of the world. And some of the observations of my students are things that have become pretty consistent. CVS is considered kind of like a hub for the middle schools, for example. And I'll have my students ask me, like, why don't we have, I don't know, a Chipotle, or why don't we have a Starbucks? And those kinds of conversations are things that I think have really inspired me to take interest in how the downtown develops. As someone who personally loves history, and I am not only fortunate to have I grew up in Hudson County. So I actually grew up in the town next to where the famous duel between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr took place. Okay. And here, walking around and seeing Elizabeth Cady Stanton's home, knowing that this is a community that has such an eclectic and varied connection to different parts of history. I am really interested in making sure that while our community moves forward, because we can't stop development, that will be, no place is stagnant, and it shouldn't be. I want to make sure that we also respect and we preserve as best we can the essential character of Tenafly, which is very important to me. I take to heart the fact that this is a really special place, and I want to see it continue to grow, but I also don't want it to completely lose what I feel is a very particular character.
When I moved back to Tenafly in 2014, and I started getting personally involved in the community, several of the older community members were referring to Tenafly as Camelot. And I always thought that was a great analogy, because in my years here, now I've been here for about a decade, everyone I've met, whether they agreed with me or not about certain issues, they deeply cared about Tenafly. So that was a unifying factor. So regardless of, again, taking different stands on different issues, the love and the concern for Tenafly and the desire to do good for Tenafly have been there at least in the past 10 years.
Yes, and I can definitely say that I can echo that, Hercules. I've been a teacher in the district since 2008. I've been a resident recently. I moved into town right at the beginning of the pandemic, but I do share your observation. People genuinely love this town. And I think that is a beautiful thing. I also love to hear that you two have experienced this, I guess, respectful agreeing to disagree. One thing that I can say that I also observe quite often, whether it be in my face-to-face interactions or my interactions on social media, Tenaflycians, as they would be, are very vocal
Yes.
about their passions. And I think that it's great that people are respectful of each other when they exchange opinions, because often I think in that disagreement, if as long as there is a exchange of ideas, sometimes those are where the best solutions come from.
I agree. And I've always found that even if we disagree strongly about a handful of areas, that there are hundreds of things that we do agree on. So it's more productive to focus on the things where we have agreement, and then we'll sort the other things out, as we discuss them more and get to know each other better and develop better communication and for those areas.
Yes, I agree.
So in terms of a legacy, if you were building a legacy through being part of the local government, what would you like people to say about you? How would you like people to remember your term? What's really, really important to you?
So the first thing I would love to say is that I appreciate your positivity, and I'm not even on council yet. So the thought of even genuinely considering my legacy is a question I'm going to approach with a little bit of hesitancy. I'm just like, I have to get there first. But I will say that if I do have the opportunity, if the town decides to give me the chance to be part of council and affect change, I would genuinely love to see. I already spoke to you about downtown. I spoke to you a little bit about how much I appreciate history. But I also would love to see multi-generational recreational spaces, which I know is something that is important too. I have a strong connection to kids and high school students in particular because of my job. But I also realize that the community is made up of different generations, different groups. And I would love to be able to see places where senior citizens can go and hang out with, at the same time that there are spaces for younger children, or that there are places that older children, middle schoolers, high schoolers can go and enjoy recreational facilities. We already have some in place. I see potential for more. And I do hope that should I get the opportunity to be part of council, that part of my legacy, if you will, would be having a hand in developing that.
That would be incredibly awesome. Do you have any particular committees that you would like be interested in being the liaison to?
I'm definitely very interested in joining or participating in the planning board. I would like to be able to do recreation. I find interesting. I also been involved with recreation as a parent, and I would like to consider that. And although I have been remiss in joining it recently, when I first moved to town, Karen Noose was incredibly welcoming when I wanted to join the historical preservation committee. So those are things that I would like to consider, and I would like to be a part of if I can.
That would be awesome choices, given your background and your interests. And I would argue with you about not it being premature for you to develop a legacy. You're already developing a legacy through your education and through you're helping people vote and become informed voters, and to know about the issues. So you've been building a legacy throughout your entire journey, and it's been a unique one rather than a standard one. And your life brought you to the point where you can actualize your dreams. So that in itself is something that very few people can state, that their journey brought where they wanted to be.
Yes, you're very kind. I just, I tend to be a little trepidatious. This is, like I said, this is a new thing. And another, one thing I can say is that my students in particular, I feel would probably categorize me as incredibly enthusiastic, almost to the point of almost being cartoonish, if you will. And I love that energy. But in the realm of politics, I've always been somebody who, up until now, has been behind the stage, so to speak. Like I mentioned before, when I was growing up in West New York, which is where I first became politically active, I was always one of those people who assisted in knocking on doors or making sure that people were registered for their mail-in ballots. This is a completely different thing. So I'm excited. I do hope to be able to make it into council, but that legacy I see in a very different way than a legacy that I could have if I were actually part of council.
And do you have any, you said that you're inspired by historic heroes and how historic Tenafly is. What are your political or leadership heroes in American history?
Ooh, I love your questions. So
Thank you.
I am going to say I really admire Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass is someone who I've always known about, but this past summer, my children and I love the Finger Lakes. So we were up near Rochester and Buffalo, that like part of the Finger Lakes region of New York. And I got to also go to Seneca Falls and realized how involved he was in the suffragist movement and also his impact in Rochester. So I have to say that after that time spent upstate and also reading a biography of his, I find him to be someone I genuinely admire. And as far, I would have to say that people that I admire in American history tend to be people who are either people who rise to the occasion, like the women who were involved in the creation of OSHA. So I don't know if you have ever heard of the book The Radium Girls.
No, I
love history and historical fiction. And one of my colleagues here at the high school, Eileen Greco, who's a voracious reader, always gives me suggestions for books that I should read. And I read The Radium Girls, which is a book about essentially the plight of young women, a lot of them either recent immigrants or first generation Americans, who were working on watch faces and like instrument faces with radioactive paint in during First World War. And they didn't realize, the women and quite a few of the people who employed these women, that the radioactive element in the paint that they were using was incredibly damaging. It was useful for what they needed, right? Because they needed to these clock faces and these instruments to be able to be seen at night, right? Like glow in the dark. But there wasn't enough knowledge available to these workers that what they were working with was potentially damaging to their bodies. And the book that I'm referring to talks about these women. There were different like hubs of industry. One was here, I think, in Newark and in Elizabeth. Another one was in the Midwest, and how these women started to realize that they were slowly dying because they were slowly ingesting portions or dosage of radium. And because of what they went through, the government eventually created the OSHA. and we have to thank them. They're women that and families that many of us likely don't know, or really, unless that book was published, we would have probably never really truly appreciated the amount of sacrifice and obstacles they had to overcome. But those are the kinds of people that I would say that I truly admire and look to when I think of people that I admire in American history.
Those who gave of themselves and took what happened to them and turned it into something positive for everybody else. That is
Yes.
noble.
Yes, and I think that while there are many other names that I could say that, yeah, I know, or I am impressed by, it's often the minor cog in the greater machine of history that I think we need collectively to appreciate and to know more about.
Very well said and very powerfully said. And now I want to read that book. So thank you.
It's a good book. I highly suggest it. You know, I'm very fond of the library too, because I have I don't want to say something that sounds negative, but they say that the difference between a hoarder and a collector is that a hoard is not as organized, or at least seemingly not organized. I probably have way too many books, and actually I'm sure I have way too many books in my home, and I am very thankful for my library card and the resources available to me through the library, because that book is there. You can go and check it out. Shameless plug to the Radium Girls.
I most certainly will. And I too am a hoarder of books. I started getting published now, so my writings have appeared in over 20 books, and I've crossed that line. But yes, I have lots of books. I love books. I love reading. So I certainly understand where you're coming from. What we're going to do next is we're going to go to all the different stances that you have because of your background, and see what your vision is for other people who are there in Tenafly. So you're a parent.
I am.
So as a parent, what would you like to see happen in Tenafly for your children and for the children of other Tenaflycians?
Oof. So, like I said, I would love to see further development of recreational spaces, and recreational spaces that are just not geared to one age group or one, or even something that I think often is considered and not discussed as much as it potentially could be, but spaces that are also available to people who have different abilities or different possibilities of movement. I think that is important as well, because the population is definitely one that is varied, and we should be able to enjoy recreational spaces in town that cater to every single person who is part of this community.
I'm the chairman of the Access for All Committee, and I would welcome that conversation, because yes, Tenafly is a wonderful town, but you know, we still have to address certain areas of accessibility to make all the wonderful things our town has to offer accessible to all of our residents. So thank you for considering that, because that is a very much needed thing. As a history buff, what would you like to see in Tenafly for other history buffs? I'm a history buff as well.
Oof. I mean, this is completely hypothetical.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I would love to see more people take advantage of the History Walk, that brochure that was published by the Historical Preservation Committee about places that are significant to Elizabeth Cady Stanton. It blows my mind. I am very much a mid-century, a mid-last century nerd. And I love to admire Glenn Miller's home from outside very often. I also love, I think that there's history is complicated, right? That's a conversation perhaps for later. But I think that history also needs to not be forgotten. And there are things that I think that unless we really reach out and disseminate information to the people who are moving into town or have been living here for a little bit, we run the risk of things being forgotten and potentially damaged or torn down or replaced. And those are things that concern me. And that's not just from living here in Tenafly, even where I grew up. If I don't know how familiar you are with West New York, but the local post office has one of the last intact WPA murals that were done by the WPA, created by Roosevelt, by FDR. And I love that mural. And I took it upon myself to learn about it. And I try to do the same thing here. There's so much, I don't know how many other communities can claim links to science. For example, Dr. Apgar, right? We have musicians, Glenn Miller being the first one off the top of my head, but there are a lot of other people I'm sure I could mention. The theater, history. I don't know how many other towns in the area really have that varied collection of connections to history. And I think that I would love to see that celebrated. How, I don't know. I don't know if just putting signs in front of places might be, but I mean, it would be wonderful to have maybe some community service thing where high school students maybe or do, or even, present history maybe like once a month to different people who'd be interested. I don't know, just thinking off the top of my head. But that's something I think that I would love to see happen if possible.
If you can't make that happen somewhere else, I'm willing to dedicate a podcast to the history of Tenafly. We could do it like every other month or something, and to get started, if you'd like.
I would love to be included in that, and I'm sure that that in the Tenafly Library, there's even a cabinet with all of this. It's just even that celebrating a piece from once a month from that collection, I think is a great starting point.
When I first moved here, I had more unstructured time, so I used to occasionally attend the Historic Society meetings, and then have conversations with the town historians and Paul Stefanowitz, especially. We had like tons and tons and tons of.
I love his book.
Yes. I remember when that book was published. Okay, you answered a lot of these before, but I just want to put you in different stances because your answers are gold. You're really opening up to who you are and what you stand for, and I'm finding a lot of resonance with what you're saying. So, okay, we have the parent, we have the history buff, now the educator. As an educator, and again, you touched upon this before, what would you like to see in Tenafly to make Tenafly a better place?
Oof. So I will preface this by saying that since Tenafly is my employer, I'm going to, this will probably be the most succinct of my responses. I will tell you that our school system is incredibly fortunate for the kind of educator that we attract. Not just speaking about my colleagues at the high school level, but like I said, as a parent, I have one child who's currently a sophomore. So I do have experience with the elementary schools and with the middle school as well as the high school now. And I think that our staff is amazing. Not just the teaching staff, but everyone who's involved in the educational system. Are there things that I would love to see happen? Absolutely. And I can tell you that just as you've probably noticed that I'm a very long-winded answer, I am definitely
you're very communicative, and you speak very well. So,
well, what I want to say is I'm very much I feel that I can take pride in two qualities of my personality. And one is that I'm a very much what you see is what you get kind of person.
Mhm.
And I also am not afraid to go to the person or the organization that can best affect change in a situation and let them know, what I think. And hopefully it can actually affect change. So yeah, there are things I would like to see change. Fortunately, it's not something amongst the staff. And I can tell you, even coming here, you mentioned before when you first moved to Tenafly, right? That some of the older residents referred to Tenafly as Camelot.
Yes.
So my high school, I've basically always taught high school. So where I first taught was down in Middletown in Monmouth County. I'd been there 7 years, and then I interviewed to come here. And I distinctly remember the first time I saw the high school library, and Mr. DiGregorio had classical music playing in the background, and just the caliber of student. Our school district, very much like our community, is wonderfully unique. And I'm incredibly appreciative of that. So I am hesitant to criticize. There's always room for improvement, but really it's the district is a great district.
Yes, I agree with you. It's a great district. Tenafly is known for its school system, and people come to Tenafly and move to Tenafly because of the school system. I've taught different age groups throughout my career. Here in Tenafly, I'm doing after-school programs. Some for other companies, some for my own company. So I'm pretty involved with the schools. And yes, I'm phenomenally impressed with all our different schools and all the different people who work in the schools, from maintenance to security to the teachers to everybody. It's a really great environment to be in.
I agree.
Now, you also have a history of encouraging people to vote. And that is very, very important. This is supposed to be a participatory democracy. We have a voice, we can express that.
Yes.
Through our vote. So what would you tell to people who are undecided about the voting? Because some people are expressing, oh, it's all the same thing. I've heard that argument throughout my life, and I believed it for a small part of my life. So what would you tell to people who don't want to vote?
Oh my goodness. I will repeat what I say often. Like you said, Hercules, this is a participatory government. I feel very strongly about voting. I have made my best effort to vote in every single election that I can vote for, even when I was living overseas. I used to, when I lived in Florence, Italy for almost 5 years. And I would always go to the embassy and fill out my mail-in ballot every single election that I could, because to circle back to my parents, while I didn't, because my parents have passed away, but I didn't share a lot of my parents' political philosophies. My parents were very much your standard Viva Reagan Cuban Republicans. We did share a very passionate view of being able to speak through your vote. And I think it's important. You need to be informed. There are 3 very capable people running for 2 positions in council. And I think it's important for each voter to inform themselves. I think it's important that they consider who they want to be on council, and then make it a point to either fill in that mail-in ballot if they have it, or go on June 6th to your polling place and vote. That is something that is the strongest and most important thing that any person who can vote in this country can do.
And the ancient Greeks who had an early democracy were often critical of democracies, because they felt that if you had an uneducated electorate, that democracy could lead to tyranny. So it's everybody's responsibility to be an informed voter and not just a voter.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I would love to take the opportunity to say that I know that there have been some rumblings about uh, our unwillingness to debate. And it really is not an unwillingness to speak to the community, but a logistical complication that keeps us from having a debate before the primary. But uh, I am on social media. I am pretty easily identifiable. I mean, I realize that between my glasses and my purple hair and my children, and I have a very large dog who is a frequent visitor of the dog park. If somebody wants to ask me something, absolutely. You know, I don't shy away from giving someone my opinion about an issue. And I also am not hesitant to tell you that I need to inform myself better because I take that to heart. And what you said is absolutely true. Our government and the success of our government and the society that it helps to foster is really dependent on how much we each inform ourselves and how active we are as citizens. So yes, I really am thankful that you said what you said because that's true. I genuinely and wholeheartedly agree with you.
I am very passionate about elections. I work the polls. I've been doing that since 2014 when I came back to Tenafly. I hope, in fact, this podcast is part of an informed voting series.
Thank you.
So it's very important for people to hear from the candidates, know who the candidates are. One of the things I've noticed over the years is that folks who are more alert or aware of what local government is doing know that, you know, that local government, especially on like the level of the borough, is very responsive to the residents of that borough. And a lot of people don't know that, and they tend to bunch all local leaders or all politicians under whatever umbrella they want to put them under and say general things about them. But in all my years of attending council meetings on and off and following the politics of Tenafly, I've never seen a more hardworking group of people trying to improve. And some things take time. Like I've seen some conversations that started when I first moved back here, finding resolution like a couple of years ago. So the conversation has been going for a while, but I've seen them actually happen. So the town does not let go of these things. They carry over from administration to administration, and eventually they happen in our town. Some things happen relatively quickly as well. But I'm a big fan of our local leaders.
I would actually say that if you are an informed voter, one realizes that your local politicians are actually immensely more influential on your day-to-day life than going to vote for the president or going to vote for someone at the federal level. I think that being aware of that is part of the reason that it took me so long to even consider what running for council, because it's something that I don't take lightly. I know, as I think I mentioned to you at the beginning of our conversation, of the multiple people who threw their hat into the proverbial ring for this election. I was the only one who didn't have experience politically in Tenafly. And also, I couldn't vote for myself because I'm not the representative of my ward here in Tenafly. And I had to call everyone, which was a really eye-opening experience because while I've knocked on doors for other people, I never had to essentially cold call people, including yourself, right?
I remember.
And yeah, and a couple people were very straightforward, like, why are you doing this, or who put you up to this? And I'm like, nobody put me up to this. If anything, I would love to see more people be involved in politics because it is significant. With that said, I'm also very thankful that things often in government, as frustrating as it can be when you're passionate about something, I'm thankful that things take their time, because rash decisions at any level of government can have some pretty devastating consequences. And things do need to be discussed, and things do need to be considered, all different perspectives. And while it can be frustrating, I think it's a safety net, as much as we often forget that it is, that things are a little slow.
Now, is there anything we didn't cover that you could add?
I think that there are a couple. I mean, I did mention my interest in the downtown, my thoughts on green spaces in the area. One thing that I think always concerns people when I just address it superficially are my thoughts about planning or extensions of private property. And I want to make it clear that one, I'm still learning the process. I wish I knew everything. I don't. But I can say that part of my concern is coming from, again, looking at the bigger picture. I, because of my dog, walk around my neighborhood a lot. And because of my children and being essentially their transportation to play dates and whatnot, I drive around town a lot. And when I see a new home getting put up and I see that trees have been taken down and they haven't been replaced, I get worried. It's not a perspective of wanting to police people. It's not a perspective of thinking that residents should not have the ability to build a new home if that's what they want. But if we remember that our infrastructure was built decades ago with a certain base of trees in particular in the area, those trees help make sure that water is not an issue when we have some of these like more serious storms. And if we don't replace those trees, in addition to multiple other things, they're all little parts that all affect one another, it can really cause a lot of damage. And that's like one of those things that I think needs to be discussed more and really considered how quickly we let development happen in Tenafly. Not because I want to obstacle anyone, private or business, but simply because I think, at least from my outsider perspective, sometimes I worry that things are not as fully considered as perhaps they should be. And that's not a criticism of the local government, of the current local government either. It's just simply not being in the room where it happens, and not being privy to the level of detail that perhaps has happened. That's just my personal impression.
I feel strongly about the trees also. That's a topic for a whole other show. We could spend a lot of time discussing the trees. Anything else you'd like to add to our conversation?
Yes. So I wear many metaphorical hats, as we've discussed. I am an employee of the school system in town. I'm a parent. I'm a taxpayer. I pride myself in being able to separate things. Even here in my school, I am a person that if I have to go talk to a colleague about an issue with one of my actual children, before I even start, I will say, I'm coming to you to talk to you as a parent. Same thing if I get the opportunity to work for council, I am going to dedicate that time in council with my resident hat on, so to speak. I'm not that I want to be considered to be part of council, because as a resident of Tenafly, I would like to be able to affect change. If people read my resume, which is on our campaign's Facebook page, and I'm gonna also post it likely in some of the pages you're gonna post the link for this conversation. I have a varied background. I'm not originally from Bergen County. I have a different professional and educational experience, I think, from some of the other candidates. And because of the profession I'm in and my background, I think that I'm worthy of consideration because I bring a different perspective to the table. And I would like to be able to have the opportunity to bring that perspective to the council.
Can you elaborate on that? I'm familiar with West New York. I have Cuban cousins. For a period of time, they lived in West New York, then they moved down to Florida. But they originally started out in the Bronx. That's where I grew up initially. So what perspective what perspective from your old neighborhood would you bring to things here in Tenafly?
So what I would say is that, one, it comes back to what we were saying about Tenafly, even the school district. I think that sometimes we forget how special this area is. And I think growing up where I grew up, I mean, you're talking to somebody who I am a proud product of the public education system. I grew up, West New York for a very long time was the most crowded square mile in the entire country.
Wow.
Yeah. So the first time I ever saw a deer, okay, I was almost out of high school. And I still have moments, as trite as this is going to sound, where I pinch myself that I have the opportunity to give my children the life that they have, that I get to interact with the kids and the adults that I get to interact with. And it's only 30 minutes from where I grew up. I still have that West New York kid in the back of my head, where I remember we used to drive up this way. And I don't know if you know this, but are you familiar with the urban legend of Devil's Tower in Alpine? Yes. The Rio Vista Tower. So, I mean, my generation, I remember we used to drive up here, okay, and try to scare the dickens out of each other, okay, going around the Devil's Tower at midnight and thinking that this area was so far away and so remotely different from where I grew up. And in a lot of ways it is, absolutely. But being here and now living here, you realize that the world is a village. Mm-hmm. And you also realize too that, albeit a wonderful place, it needs people to be actively involved in making sure that it continues to be a wonderful place as it progresses. And I think that my childhood and my growing up where I grew up is something that allows me to be appreciative while also wanting to improve the community, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And part of one of the hats that I wear too is paranormal investigator. And I look into all those things. That's a conversation for another day as well.
Okay, so you have homework now. You have to read The Radium Girls. Yes. And if you go to Devil's Tower, please let me know and I will assist.
Awesome. I will most definitely do so. Thank you very much for your time. I've become a fan. How can people find you? How can they get involved in your campaign? How can they get involved with all the wonderful things that you're doing?
Okay, so if they are on Facebook, please find our campaign's Facebook page. It's Grossman and Pelaez-Martinez. I think it's either For Council 2023 or just 2023. I am going to post my resume in Tenafly Times and in Tenafly Parents and Caregivers as well. And on the resume and on that page is also our email address. Feel free to ask us questions. And listen, if you see me around and you want to ask me a question, by all means, stop me. We can chat. If I have the time, I will gladly engage in a conversation. We don't have to agree. We don't have to come away being a fan. I appreciate, Hercules, that you are. But, take the time now. We only have a couple weeks before the primary, and, inform yourself on all three of us, Laura and Jeff and myself, and when, speak with your vote.
Thank you very much, Beatriz. I had a great time conversing with you. I wish you success in this and all your other ventures. And
I hope we definitely cross paths again, Hercules. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm sure we will. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.